Good evening. Welcome to the meeting of the Folkestone and Hythe District and Parish Council's Joint Committee. Please note this meeting is being streamed live to the internet. Please could all members ensure their microphone is set to mute unless they are speaking to reduce any background noise. So we will move to the first item, which is the appointment of chair. For the purpose of tonight's meeting, members must appoint a parish councillor to chair the meeting. Do I have any nominations, please?
Propose Frank Hobbs.
Happy to second.
Thank you, Jim. All in favour?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you for being appointed as the chair.
Thank you, Alex. And thank you, everybody else. And good evening. Lovely weather again today.
Yeah, lovely weather.
Item 2 is apologies for absence, Alex.
Thank you. We've had apologies from councillors Boland and Burgess.
Any declarations of interest? Unlikely, as it's not a decision-making meeting anyway. No. Minutes of the meeting held on the 20th of November have all been circulated. Are you all happy for them to be noted as a correct record?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Yeah, agreed.
We need a proposer and seconder. I noticed we missed it off the minutes last time.
No, it's okay. If everyone's agreed, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay. Moving on then to LGR update. Or who's handling this one? You, Jim?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, sadly, it is, Frank. But I'm very, very short this time because the submission has gone in, and the minister is reviewing all, whatever it is, 190 whatever submissions they've got to review, and we now just wait. The next thing that will happen will be that the minister will set up a consultation process. I think it's a 6-week process whereby all of the submissions will be consulted on. Now, in reality, I don't think this is going to be a very elaborate process. I think they're going to be posted on a website, and people are going to be asked to make comments on them. I don't think there'll be anything more than that. I might be wrong, but that's just my reading of it. So once the consultation has taken place, so sort of early spring, we're hoping that the minister will then take it all back, have a last look at everything, and we think that we will get to hear what our specific geographies are, probably June or July. Lots of people are saying to me that they think they'll make the announcement just before the summer recess, parliamentary recess, and then kind of just let us get on with it rather than sort of argue about it. I was on a webinar with the minister the day before yesterday, and there was the distinct impression that they were overwhelmed, that what we popularly call the baby civil servants, because obviously they're generally young people, and they're very, very clever. They talk very fast in this kind of bizarre civil service language, and you can put questions in the chat box and they'll answer them, but they said a very interesting thing, in so much as they feel that all of the submissions will be consulted on. Now, in Kent, as you know, we've got 5 submissions. 1A doesn't support devolution, the KCC submission, and 5A really doesn't make a great deal of sense in any criteria, particularly financially, but the civil servants told us they would be consulting on everything they've received. So, excuse me. We thought that they might kind of knock out the no hopers and then consult on the ones that have got some, you know, some kind of substance to them, but apparently not. They are going to consult on everything, but then she said they will then review compliance, which is going to be really the wrong way to do it if that's what they're planning to do. Yeah, I don't know. Well, we'll just have to see what comes out, because, you know, it's really gonna upset people if they've gone to the trouble of you know, in Kent, making comments on all 5 submissions, only to have 2 of them declared you know, non-compliant. So anyway, we'll see. We'll just have to wait and see. Generally, across local government, people have drawn breath and have, you know, not in our area, but in other parts of the country that were affected by elections, that had elections in 2026. You may have picked up in the news, etc. There's a huge fuss about elections being cancelled, and I was reading. So it was decided today, and I think that I can't remember the exact numbers. Tim might know them better than me, but I think there was something like 68 or 67 or 68 councils affected, and 29 of them have had their elections cancelled. It doesn't affect us in Kent because of where we are on the cycle. The only district that it affects in Kent is Tunbridge Wells, because they still do it the old-fashioned way, a third, and a third. So they are having to postpone one of their thirds in order to get into the cycle. So that's where we are on it. I can't tell you, you know, as ever, I can't tell you anything definitive on it, except we've put the submission in, and along with all of the other councils, and now we're waiting for the minister to consult and then make the decision during the spring and early summer. So that's about it, Frank. Happy to answer any questions.
Tunbridge Wells are going ahead, Jim.
How are they?
On the list today. Yeah, that was one of the councils that did not postpone, so they are going ahead. So all Kent councils will have the elections they were expecting to have.
Right. Okay. Great. Okay. Thanks, Tim. That's great.
Yeah. Before we move on to say, Paul's got his hand up first, but there was a count workshop this morning for area committee chairman and vice chairman with Tim Wilmer from KCC. One thing it did clear up was the submission that cuts Folkestone and Hythe in 2 was showing on a sort of a straight line on the map. Apparently it won't be a straight line. It'll be done on parish boundaries.
Yeah,
Some of us will be in the north and some of us will be in the south if that one goes ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. Folkestone will be in East Kent and Hythe will be in Mid Kent.
Yeah.
You know, so you know, there's no way, you know, that submission, and I get it. I know what they did. They started with their population basis, and they were working it out. But we can't support that because obviously it divides us in 2, and you know, another great favourite. I won't talk about it here, but so, for example, Otterpool, Frank, the people of Folkestone, for example, have been paying for Otterpool for a number of years through their council tax. If that 4D, it's called, divides us, how are the people of Folkestone going to be repaid if Otterpool is in another unitary? Do you know what I mean? It throws up a heck of a lot of issues for us. Yeah. So I would very much rather not to have that. I would very much rather not to have that one.
Yeah. Paul.
So I was just going to say that we did actually have a very good briefing from Lawrence Conway, Jim, on the realities of LGR from a Cumbria perspective, and it's very interesting the things that that came out of that. Some of that's available on the internet as well, but it is worth having a look at that in terms of timescales and the kind of things that happens downstream of the decision, whatever that decision is. That's all I was going to say. Thanks, Frank.
Yeah. I think his key word was flexibility, Paul. You know, you just got to get on with it and roll with whatever they sling at you.
Any other questions, comments? I see no hands. I can't see everybody anyway, but I see no hands on the screen anywhere either. No? Okay, well, thank you, Jim.
Oh, well, thank you very much, Frank. Sadly, I have to run now because I've got to get into Hythe Town Council meeting. But thank you very much. And this won't continue. I'm not being disrespectful to this committee. It's just that we have this clash. So I'm sorry that I've got to run. But there you are. Okay. All right. All the very best. Bye now.
Thanks, Jim.
Yeah. See you, Jim.
Bye now.
Item 6 is the budget update. I don't know who's taking this one. Is that you, Alex?
Yeah, evening everyone. Yeah, it's me taking it today. Alex, did you want to share the slides or do you want to present? Or do you want me to? Right, okay. Seem to have lost Alex, so I'll share. It's not a problem.
Sorry, I was on mute. I can share them if it's easier.
Yeah, if you could, that'd be great. Thank you.
Okay, bear with me. Alright, can you see my screen?
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you, Alex. So if you want to go on to the first slide. So what we thought we'd do today is just give you an update in terms of where we are in terms of budget process for 26-27. Obviously, we came to last meeting as well and gave you kind of like a position that we were currently in then, and we've just thought it's appropriate to come back and give you a bit more of an update. So Alex, you can go on to the next slide for me, please. So this kind of shows our budget process. You can see we started back in October, and as you can see, there's been quite a few processes that we've gone through in terms of the actual budget process. There's been quite a few reports that have gone to various committees, including fees and charges. Growth items have gone as well. And we're getting to the point now that we've received the provisional update on the 15th of December. The final settlement will come hopefully by the end of January, if not early February, but it's very well. It tends to turn up whenever it turns up. They never actually let us know. But it's not expected it's going to differ too far from the provisional figures. But so I'd say end of January, early February, we'll find out for definite what our financial settlement is. The settlement this year is actually for a 3-year period. So for a very long time, the financial settlement has been a year on year. But this time they set it for the next 3 years, which neatly takes us into LGR and does give us some certainty in terms of our forward funding for the next 3 years. It doesn't give us particularly good funding for the next 3 years, I'll just make that point, but it does give us some certainty so we know at least what we're dealing with. I won't discuss the future items because I've got a slide on that later, but the most important one on it is on the 25th of February, the budget, all the associated papers, including the council tax, everything will go to the full council where they will be asked to vote on that budget and pass that budget. So you can go on to the next one for us, please, Alex. So just to reiterate a little bit of the information that I think we touched on in the last presentation. So we brought the budget strategy forward. Previously, it's been coming in December. We brought it forward and presented it in October. The reason for this being is that we wanted to really be clear on what our parameters are, what our assumptions were, and highlight uncertainties in terms of the budget process. And that includes things like funding, inflation rates, and all the different elements that go into a budget. And basically, we wanted to set that out early, so we were really defining what we were setting the budget on. Also, in terms of other challenges, temporary accommodation has been well publicised. It's kind of like very much a national issue, but in terms of Folkestone and Hythe, we're now seeing a lot of people present, and that's causing us issues. So there are a number of mitigations and various programs that are in place to deal with that. However, it's still presenting itself as a problem for both 26, 27 and going forward. So I'm going to talk about the fair funding business rate reset next to give a bit of context about that. But those were two very large pieces of the work that came forward in this year. We haven't had a fair funding or business reset for a very long time, probably well overdue, but it does come out, impact us quite significantly, but I'll touch on that next. And also local government reorganisation, which Jim's obviously just spoken about. And even though it doesn't necessarily impact the 26-27 budget, it's still very much been kept in mind in terms of decision making. And as we get more clarity as we go through that process, then that will impact on our future budget decisions. If you can go on to the next one for me, please. So fair funding. So fair funding is essentially redistributing the money, not necessarily increasing, but redistributing the money where there's the biggest element of deprivation. So that's what it's seeking to do. It's seeking to identify those areas that have the highest need and placing the money there. So the money may be technically raised in Folkestone and Hythe, but it may be, you know, allocated to a different district. It's a, you know, also a national model. So in terms of us and the business rate reset, effectively they reset the business rate growth down to zero. So they start it again. So to us, that means a business rate growth loss of £3 million. So it's quite significant. It has been confirmed that in future years, and if any more business rate growth that we do have locally, we will retain. But as you're resetting it, it takes a while for that to start to build up and recover. And it's anticipated that there may be another business rate reset in the next 3 years, but that is to be confirmed. So in terms of fair funding, unfortunately, it had quite a significant impact on us. They set a fair funding target. Don't know what the target is. They've not really set information, but basically Folkestone and Hythe were deemed to be more than 15% away from that target. What that meant is that when they were doing the transition funding, in terms of our core spending power, they've only protected 95% of that. So we're effectively taking a 5% cut, and that will be phased over 3 years. So it's 5% in total, but phased over the 3 years. And the way the figures have come out, they seem to be taking it or affecting that in the 3rd year. So, you know, beneficial from that point of view. Also, in part of the fair funding business rate reset, they confirmed that the extended producer responsibility is now being included in our core spending power. Previously, it's sat outside that, so it's quite an interesting move. And basically, the government's view is that reserves and the EPR should be used to offset the impact of the business rate reset and the fair funding. Also, the fair funding review assumes that all council tax will set their, all councils will set their council tax at the maximum. So in our case, we set it at 2.99%. So effectively, if you were to, or the council were to set their council tax below that, effectively you get a double hit. You get the assumption, so they reduce your funding already, and then you'd actually lose the income that you're not increasing that by. So that's quite key that they've made that assumption. Again, there's no change to referendum limits, so it still sits at 3%. And new homes bonus, which has been a scheme that's there to encourage new build, and has been wound down over the last few years, has now completely gone, and it's not been replaced by any specific schemes. Next one, if you could, Alex, please. So from the business rate reset and the fair funding, and you know the actual normal sort of budget sort of processes that we go through, there are a number of pressures. So new homes bonus, that was 432,000, that's gone. The impact of business reset is circa £3 million. Growth items, so within that we have temporary accommodation. The pressure for 26-27 is 1.3 million, and then we have a number of budget realignments, but the growth items coming in for this year is 2.3 million. And then in terms of contract and other inflationary increases, it's 1.2 million, and that's year on year. Now, in the provisional settlement, they gave us an additional 2.1 million, but that covers the entire 3-year period. So you can already see there's immediate pressures there. Unexpectedly, the recovery grant that we received in 25-26, which we thought, well, we're led to believe was a 1-year grant, that's now been confirmed for another 3 years. So that's positive. And then, as I touched on earlier on, there's assumed council tax growth, and also the fact that government have made it quite clear that the use of reserves is expected. So we will look at that and ongoing. And there have been other adjustments in terms of the temporary accommodation strategies. There's a number of strategies in place to try to not only deal with the level of representations that we're getting, but also the financial impact of that and the subsidy gap that exists between the amount of money that we get from government to fund temporary accommodation that we don't own and the actual cost of temporary accommodation itself. Unless any questions, I'm going to go on to the next slide, please, Alex. So next steps. So we are waiting the final preceptor information. So this is from like KCC, police, fire. It's normal that we wait until the end of the process. So they need to have their meetings in order to pass that. Also, we obviously need the council tax precept information from yourselves. That obviously fits into our budget papers, doesn't affect our actual budgets in terms of how much money we get, but obviously we need that information so we can put those in the papers and pass the budget. We're also going to do the charity, so that's under the special expense, that's an additional allowance, as well as we will do the council tax resolution and tax tables. And now the actual cabinet is on the 11th of February, so there's a typo there, apologies, but it's 11th of February. That will then go on to council from the 25th of February, and then after that it'll be billing, and the budget will be in place from the 1st of April. So that's it. I'm happy to answer any questions anyone has.
Paul.
Yeah. Hi, Alan. Thank you very much. That's very comprehensive. Thank you. Did all of the parishes submit their precept spreadsheets within the agreed time frame, please?
So no, unfortunately, so there's a bit of learning there from our point as well, really. So by the time we had set the kind of like the timetable, I don't think that had been communicated effectively last year. So a lot of parishes have set their meetings after the date that we were asking them back, which was the 9th of January. So we contacted each of those individually and basically have agreed a timescale with them in order to get those precept information back. But we did get the majority of them back in good time. When it comes to next year, we will make it quite clear what the timetable is so that the various parishes can set their meetings accordingly.
Thank you very much.
Tim.
But yeah, just to say on that process, obviously we did do that and we went through that loop and took that learning. Then when on the 13th a revised spreadsheet went out asking whether people wanted to amend those, that has caused some issues as the amendments are a couple of pounds a year for a number of places. And just for you, Alan, I didn't know if it had been passed to you today. The circulation list of that email was checked. It didn't include going to Folkestone Town Council, our biggest parish precepting area. So they didn't know about it. And their council tax meeting to set their precept is this evening. I have thrown myself in front of that problem, and they will now be working on the correct figures. But that was an issue.
Okay, no, I wasn't aware of that, and I can only extend apologies for that. Obviously, you know, it's regrettable that anything like that happens. In terms of what the reason, just to get a bit of context, I mean, you know this anyway, Tim, but in terms of the requirement for that reissue of the precept request was because we are changing our council tax reduction scheme from 75 to 100%. That requires, or that affects, our bandy equivalent. So when we're calculating our tax base, in order to get those calculations in, we had to get a bit of system in after members obviously passed that recommendation, and subsequently we've had to get these figures back out. So it's not normal, but because we changed that CTR scheme, it does have an impact on the tax base, and hence why we needed to come up and reissue them. But apologies for it not going to yourself, Tim. I'll look into that and understand exactly what went wrong there. But I'm glad that you're on top of it as well.
It went to me on two of my councils. It didn't go to my third one.
Sorry, Tim.
Sorry, it went to two of the councils I sit on, which is why I knew that the numbers had gone out. It just didn't go to the third one. So
we assumed that we didn't have to do anything about that letter because we just submitted a sum that we required as the precept. We didn't use the tax base or anything like that to come to that sum.
Yeah, so no, you wouldn't do. So what it was more about is just allowing you to understand that whatever preset you were setting, what percentage that would mean, because your tax base is changing, it's reducing slightly from the CTR adjustment. It would mean that even if you kept the figure at the same amount, your percentage increase may change. So it's more about trying to give you a bit more clarity so you were happy about any percentage changes, but it will not affect the actual amount you receive.
No. Okay. Thank you. Any other comments? I can't see any hands. Yes. I can see one now. Where are we? I can't see anybody on the top, so I can't see who it is.
Yeah, it's me, Frank. It's Mike Boer.
Oh, hello, Mike. Yes.
Yeah, it was only a small point. With the recovery grant, that 479, was that divided by the 3 years, or was that 479k per year?
Fortunately, it's 479,000 per year.
Right. Okay. Thanks.
Welcome.
Anybody else? No. Looks like that's everybody satisfied. So thank you very much.
Right, you're very welcome. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
And you.
Cheers. Take care.
Thanks, Alan.
Thanks, Alan.
Bye.
Bye, Alan. Housing allocations policy. Who is doing that one?
That's me, Chair. That's me. I'm
yeah.
I'm just setting up my. I'm not the host at the moment, so I can't
I'm
share.
just making you a co-host now,
Thank
Adrian.
you.
So if
Thank
you
you,
try in a sec, it should work.
Okay now.
I'm here also, Chair, if there's any questions afterwards. I'm Jill Butler, Chief Officer for Housing. But I'm going to leave the presentation in Adrian's capable hands.
Okay, then, Jill. Thank you.
Okay, hopefully you can all see that now.
Not yet.
Is that like,
I can only see you. And you
yeah, I'm the.
Adrian, you're glitching. It might be easier to let Alex share it.
That's fine.
Count housing allocation. Policy document that sets out how the council prioritise was seeking rent.
You're breaking up, Adrian.
Adrian, you might need to turn your camera off because you're breaking up.
Can you all see my screen?
In
place.
Yeah.
Act, but in addition to that, the Ministry for Housing and Government also publishes regular updates in terms of guidance of what they expect local authorities to include in their allocations policy. So that's something we have to.
Still breaking up.
And expects us to take priority of within our documents. Also, who are in poor housing conditions.
Sorry, Adrian, we can't hear you.
Can you hear us?
I'll current policy has been in place since 2017, and that current recent government and to make sure we fully take account of all most recent guidance changes.
Graham, Adrian, we can't hear you at all. Unfortunately, you're glitching completely all the time.
Just try turning off your camera, Adrian,
Changes
just
in
to
the,
see
in
if
the
that
document
helps.
are changed in the district. Okay, I will go back in. Yeah. Sorry, I've just gone through. I'll just go back round again. Sorry.
I think we can hear you better now.
Can you hear me better now? Okay.
Yeah, I've got the slides up on my screen if that's easier.
Okay. Can you hear me now, everyone?
Yes.
Is that okay? Yeah. Sorry about that. So our current policy has been in place since 2017. That document is currently under review, and I'd say what we're doing is we're working through the most recent guidance that's been put in place by central government, and the key elements that we're looking at in that document that we need to update within our current policy relate to members of the armed forces and also care leavers. But what we're also doing is looking at the current document to make sure that it is as user friendly and as accessible as possible to applicants when they're using that document. And our new draft policy document will be considered by members within the council later this year. I can't put a precise date on it at the moment. We are working through that in quite a lot of detail. But what will happen is that document will go out for consultation once approved internally. We'll be contacting people on the housing list, all key partners across the district, giving them an opportunity to have their say on that document and put forward any concerns and views they have. So how do we, how do people apply to our housing list in the district? Well, essentially the process is online, and people can apply through our online system, which is part of Kent Home Choice. Anyone who has any particular difficulties with that online process can get face-to-face assistance in the council's customer access point in the civic centre. The key links that people have to have when they're looking to actually join a housing list is that they have to have a local connection, and that can be achieved through people living in the district, working in the district, or having strong family connections in the district. One of the key areas that we assess as part of that process are any medical needs and issues that a household may have. This is quite often an area for discussion that we have with applicants, but the key point with this is that if there are medical issues within the household, they have to be issues that are made worse and directly affected by the accommodation that the household's currently living in. And as we assess our applicants, we will then place them into a range of bands, A to E. A is the most serious needs group, and the number of people in that group is the smallest. This will be people with particularly acute medical needs and the most serious needs to move in the district and access council and housing association homes. Produced this table here, which gives you an overview really of how we prioritise. So, and it's probably illustrative of how the register pretty much works at the moment in terms of numbers of applicants. So, the most critical need, as I just mentioned, would be people with very, very serious health needs and other reasons to move. And that's probably the smallest group of people on the housing list at the moment. And B, again, slightly larger group of people, but with less serious medical or other reasons for moving. And then we go down to the bottom of that list where Band E, which are households with who we would at this time consider to be adequately housed, but they're still looking to be on the housing list, or where we think to have no local connection with the area. So in terms of allocating council homes, all council and housing association homes that become vacant in the district, or where houses or new build houses indeed that become available through our housing association partners and through the council, they're advertised online through Kent Home Choice, and applicants on our housing list are able to view those properties online and express an interest in the homes that are suitable for them. So if a household is deemed to have a one-bedroom need on our housing list, they're not able to bid for larger properties. Once that period closes, we get a short list of applicants for each property that we've advertised, and then properties are allocated to the households in the greatest need on our housing list. But that is in date order, so people are placed within those bands, like I showed you earlier, but in date order of joining the housing list. I thought of interest tonight for this meeting is that in some circumstances, I know some parishes out there have what is called local needs accommodation, where their accommodation there is specifically allocated for people with local connections to that parish. I know there were some of those, some homes like that across the district. That's obviously something we're always happy to talk to parishes about if there's a wish to deliver more of homes along those lines. So the housing allocation policy applies to both transfer applicants and new applicants living in private sector homes, etc., across the district. What I would say is that there is a significant waiting time for all types of property across the district. We have around just over 3,500 council homes in the district and around 2,000 housing association rented homes across the district. We currently have 1,250 people on the housing list. Unfortunately, each year, in terms of properties becoming available through reletting and through new homes, we're looking at around 250 to 300 allocations each year. So there's quite a disparity between the number of people on our list and the people waiting and the actual number of homes we're able to allocate each year. I think the good news is that we are working with housing association partners to deliver more homes this year, and we have a number of housing associations delivering the district. And also the council itself is working to deliver more affordable homes in the district. We've got homes currently on site and due to complete very soon in a number of locations across the district. So we know we are clearly working to try and address the supply, to try and deal with some of the really difficult needs. Some of those needs, particularly around larger 4-bedroom properties, they're probably some of the most difficult needs to meet in the district. I think it was a very quick run through, but I'm happy to answer any questions. But I will say is the policy will be going out later in the year for consultation, and we can obviously give an update at that point in time. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Adrian. It's nice to be able to hear you in the end.
I'm sorry about that. Yep,
Right,
sorry.
yeah. Obviously, wherever you're living, it's not a very good connection area.
It should be. It is a new super fast broadband, so it should be. But I'm not sure what's going on.
No. Okay. Paul has jumped in again first.
Yeah, thanks, Frank. Yeah, thanks for that, Adrian. Just in terms of the last slide there, we were talking about parishes and local connections. Are you talking about almshouses there? Because we have those through the Southlands Arms Trust in New Romney, for example.
No, I think they would tend to be allocated on a local basis by that organisation. I'm talking more on rural exception sites across the district, and I know that there have been a few built over the last few years. I think Peen, Newington recently, and Denton as well a few years back. But so it's where it's a specific site that may not have ordinarily been developed for housing, but because it's meeting a specific local need, communities can come together, prioritise sites, and agree that there could be delivery in their parish.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for that clarification, Adrian. Thank you.
Okay.
Any more? I can't see any hands. In which case, we'll say thank you very much, Adrian and Gillian, for attending.
Thank you all.
And explaining the situation to us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Moving on
Thank you.
to waste collections and recycling changes.
Good afternoon, good evening. Are you ready for me, Frank?
Yes, I am.
Thank you. Alex, can you get the slides working?
Yeah, not a problem.
Thank you. Well, if you could move on to the next slide, Alex, thanks. I've been asked to, sorry, I'm Andrew Rush. I'm the Chief Officer Regulatory and Community Services, and I sit on the East Kent Waste Board with our joint contract with Veolia, so it explains who I am. I was asked to give a bit of an overview of our waste service, how it's doing, I'm going to talk about some of the risks facing the service, which are probably very relevant to the parishes as well. And then the main part, I'm going to sort of deal with what are called simpler recycling proposals, which are coming into action in March or early April. I'm going to talk through that and then talk finally about our Raise the Rate campaign, which is to boost recycling. So about 10 minutes of slides, if you can bear with me, and then take some questions at the end. So moving on to the waste service. Just a reminder that we are the collection authority. We work with our colleagues at county who are the disposal authority. And you can also, you probably already worked out that that's all going to change in a few years' time when we have local government reorganisation. Essentially, you'll get the meshing together of the two services. We have service about over 53,000 properties weekly. Just so you're aware, you're probably obviously clearly aware this is an alternate weekly collections with weekly food, and we cover roughly around about 95% of all properties are covered under the existing collection scheme. We have a good number of waste subscribers, over 16,000, and the contract also covers our street cleansing, 900 kilometers odd road, but probably more crucially, over 1,000 litter bins, about 400 of them along the coast. Some of them are currently, unfortunately, bobbing off in the sea off Mermaid Beach. But overall, that's quite an undertaking every summer. And it is the council's largest single contract, about 6.4 million. There's some splits down there. So next slide, Alex, thank you. So just talking about the service performance, there's really only two things that count on the base service. There is the amount of bins that you miss, which is very much operational, and your overall recycling rate. So in terms of bins that are missed, it's very, very, very good performance. It's less than 35 misses per 100,000. It's one of the top performing Veolia contracts, well within the sort of national best practice target of 60 misses per 100,000. In terms of recycling, we're doing okay, I think is the way to put it. We're certainly above average. We're above the UK recycling rate, and it's holding up well this year, and we're above the Kent average as well. But as you will talk in a moment, the actual country, county, district, and nationally, we should be over 50% by this point in where we're meant to be in terms of national targets, which is one of the reasons why we're bringing in these simpler recycling proposals. So next slide, Alex. Quickly just talk about some of the risks. Obviously, it's a frontline service, very frontline service, one of the few services consumed by all the households in the district. So if anything goes wrong, it tends to go wrong on a very large scale. Big inflationary pressures on the contract. The first contract I was involved in, which was between 2011 and 2021, we had inflation roughly around about, on average, 2%. Well, in the first few years of this, we'll be aware, sort of indexation shot up by about 10%. That adds a big pressure onto the contract cost. We have big season demands. Anyone's from a parish that's along the coast will know, the number of visitors we get to our beaches. It's a very, very, just getting around the district on a hot summer's weekend is difficult. And just worth saying that Veolia did some calculations of the amount of tonnage they were taking in on a pretty average, sunny weekend. They can take to close to 43 to 55 metric tons of waste over Saturday and Sunday. So it's an enormous amount. It's like equivalent to 2 double deckers. So it's a service that has frequent regulatory change. Obviously, with the simpler recycling proposals, but we've got we've got emissions trading scheme as well, and then lots of operational regulatory changes on the safety side, on the bulky waste, which is what the POPs regulations coming in, and on depot licensing. The EA can come along and say at some point, you can't operate beyond 12 o'clock or on a Saturday, which was the case a few years ago, which can throw out your operation automatically. I've talked about the recycling rate, but we're under the UK target, like most of the UK. We have a shared waste transfer station with Ashford, and obviously there's capacity issues there. We have the M20 vulnerability. You know, we have Tap and Brock, and not Stack. Brock. Sorry. And you know, if that is a vulnerability, if it gets seized, if something happens down the port, it starts backing up. Safety has always been a key consideration. There's a lot of moving parts, literally, on the for the service, but also we're seeing an increase in violence, aggression towards staff. Unfortunately, people driving up on pathways to try and get around vehicles, driving at the operatives directly. In some cases, getting out to have a punch up, and unfortunately, we're now we're seeing this a bit towards our street operatives as well. So people down the beach had a few drinks, what coming out and abusing staff who are just trying to empty the bins is not particularly a pretty picture. And but it is a factor, and obviously a risk. It's like government reorganisation. I talked about the meshing of the waste collection authorities, waste disposal authorities, but our contract actually ends in 2029. And one of the questions is, how are we going to sort of deal with that? Because we're going to have to retender, we're going to have to define the contract arrangements for the new authority. How far can we go? Sorry, if I go to the next slide, Alex. And this is one of the major considerations at the moment that we need to, and what we're going to do is we are going to enter into tendering arrangements, but it's going to be very, very difficult because we don't know necessarily we will be with Dover or who we'll be with. We're not going to split the district. But whatever we're going to do, we will be putting arrangements in place so that there is a waste service. I can guarantee there'll be a waste service running and operating as of the 15th of January 2029. So move on to now the sort of second part of this, which is simpler recycling. Sorry, Alex, could you? So, simpler recycling is an initiative started around about 2018 with the UK Resources and Waste Strategy and put into legislation in the 2021 Environment Act. And it has sort of four streams, simpler recycling being one of them. Now, the purpose of simpler recycling is to try and create greater standardization about what is collected and how it's collected. And this is for two sort of purposes. Firstly, they're always doing behavioral studies of why people don't recycle. And one of the most common themes is it's too complicated, you go from area to area, people collect in different ways, collect in different bins. So what they're trying to do is standardize collections across the UK in terms of what's within scope for collection and how it's collected. So from March, all local authorities are got to provide a weekly food service. They need to collect paper and card, and they need to collect dry mixed recycling, which is obviously plastic glass. So our scheme is compliant. There are certain exceptions that have been allowed by DEFRA, but basically the UK will all be the England and Wales will all be moving in that sort of direction. In addition, the scope of what collectors will be same. For example, Tetra Pak, which has been fallen out of scope for a number of years, will be back in scope, and we'll be doing some publicity on that. So we'll be from March the recycling service for across the country for all households. The second purpose of the sort of having a standardized scope is to help sort of pretty much the long-term investment. So if you are setting up a processing plant, you need to have a rate of return over 20-30 years. If you're getting the scope of what can be recycled or collected changing almost with contracts changing, then that's not great for investment. So it is hopefully will unpick a lot of investment. So that's just simpler recycling, and I'll go on to a little bit more detail on that in a moment. But in addition, we've got packaging EPR, which I think Alan mentioned in his finance presentation. This is a good thing. This is a levy on very large packaging businesses, over £2 million turnover, and this is to cover the offset cost of actually us collecting the packaging, the processing, and for that service. So we're getting a payment of roughly around about £900,000 for this year, and that's really very much welcome additional funding, which we have to obviously use in paying for our recycling service. But it's a much needed funding and helps put some really vital money into the circular economy. ETS is more affects the waste, people like KCC, waste disposal authorities. It's around waste to energy and basically a levy on that. And then finally, DRS is basically drinks cans. So setting up of kiosks in around about October 27, kiosks in sort of supermarkets so that you can bring your cans and your bottles and you get a deposit return scheme so you get some money back. And this is proved to be very successful in countries that have adopted it and actually phenomenally cuts down on waste if it's rolled out in a sort of sensible fashion. So Alex, if you could go on to the next slide. So these next two slides are just more notes that I'm going to leave in here for if you want to read at your own pleasure. Sorry, next slide, Alex. Thank you. And that one, and go on to the next one. So simpler recycling, household collections. So where are we in terms of rolling out a full recycling service? Well, we're in a really good position. We've got around about 95% of our households, and bear in mind we've been doing this for over 15, 16 years, are on a collection scheme. So in terms of collecting what needs to be collected, we can do that. In terms of material compliance, yes, we can do that. And KCC have confirmed that they're processing to the requirements of the Act. And scheme coverage is good at 95%. So we're almost there. However, we've taken the low-hanging fruit, we've taken the sort of more difficult fruit, and what we're left now is with, Alex, if you go into the next one, we are left to get to that 100% target. We are left with many properties which actually we've either trialed recycling and it hasn't taken, or don't have space. And so what we're having to do is we're doing a lot of survey work at the moment, the waste team, to identify mainly communal properties where recycling is not taking place, what availability they have of space for bins, what sort of access arrangements they have, trying to contact landlords. Mostly we're starting off with the social landlords, and determining bins provision and storage. So in terms of getting to that 5%, it's not going to be like some of our other changes, a single rollout day come the 1st of April. It will be pretty much block by block, and that's how we'll have to do it, because each is going to have its own sort of each going to have its own sort of issues that we need to resolve. Sorry, Alex, if you can go on to the next one. And then finally, I just wanted to talk through campaign that we've been running now for two years called Raise the Rate. It's a sort of series of measures, and the purpose of this is around promoting recycling. So what with some of the stuff we've been doing is we've been increasing slowly and surely the recycling scheme. We did the ultra narrow routes, which was the very narrow roads. We added another 400 properties in 2024. We've done a garden waste reroute to add capacity to that, and then obviously simple recycling. Will hopefully we'll get the last 5% as well. So we've been replacing bins as that have gone lost or damage on data collection. We've spent actually more than 130,000. This is an old slide. There's actually getting up to about 150,000 this year alone on that. We've done promotional campaigns, food waste stickers, but we've done all this activity for the last 2 or 3 years, and we've seen very little change in our recycling rate, which is unfortunate. And one of our concerns is with packaging levy, the EPR coming in, that we're going to get more lightweighting, and you can probably feel that in your, in your food containers and stuff like that. More lightweighting materials, which works against our recycling rate. deposit return schemes, DRS, in October 27. It's going to take some more materials out. So actually us trying to get to 50% might be actually proved to be very, very difficult. We may actually reach peak recycling. We don't know. But we've done the composition analysis. We did this around about, composition analysis is when you literally go through someone's bin and work out what they're throwing out. And we're doing it again in a few weeks' time. And we have found out that at least 25% of all food waste, all general waste is food. So if we could get the food waste out, we could easily hit that 50% target. And actually, when we talk about cost of living crisis, but we often come across food still within its packaging, which is a dreadful shame. So yeah, we'll probably, as part of this campaign, be looking to target food waste in particular in the next coming year. So that was a bit of a canter through waste, simpler recycling, and if we've got some time for questions, I'm happy to take them.
Everybody got their hands up? No, not at the moment. One question that I've got is, you talked about the waste transfer station being at Ashford.
Mm-hmm.
What's happened about the proposal to put one at Junction 11?
That's still ongoing. And that's still being worked through. KCC have moved that project forward, and it's still very much on the drawing board at the moment. I can't really go into because it's reached that sort of land acquisition stage, so I can't really go into much more detail than that, I'm afraid.
Okay. Jeremy.
Hi, hello. Yeah, Jeremy speaking. I'm actually cabinet member for waste management, so some people could refer to me as Minister for Bins, which is, I think, go swiftly over that one. Obviously, I work very close with Andrew. Actually, it was interesting, Andrew. It's a question you prompted me. I've never thought about this. My wife being from Sweden, they got a very, I think they're probably quite well ahead of us in terms of recycling in many respects. So how do we compare internationally? I mean, you're saying we looks like it's potentially, as much effort we put into a campaigning, it's very frustrating. We don't seem to be able to get past that 45% mark. But how do we compare with other countries which have been doing deposit return schemes? Obviously, like I know Sweden very well, and those sorts of schemes for some years. Do you know what their statistics are looking like?
They are the Nordic countries tend to be much higher. And some of the changes that you find internationally, I think the first thing to say is that as a country, we set up a lot of recycling schemes, and this includes us at Folkestone and Hythe about 10 years ago. And I think there was an expectation that I always say, I've said this before, about a sort of natural glide upwards. They thought it would become more embedded, and recycling would just sort of slowly sort of increase. And actually what you've found is the opposite. You found recycling increase as its schemes have been introduced, and then flatline, in fact, decline nationally. So and that, I think, I wouldn't say pattern unique to UK, but it's something that I think was kind of unexpected. I think there's an expectation that culturally, societally, we would get those. The Nordic countries, Germany, they tend to be quite high performers. Often they have different types of bin. You get a lot more sort of communal bins. When I say communal bins, I'm talking more flats, but I'm talking about bins within a sort of a bin serving sort of several domestic properties. There's some of their schemes are more embedded. There's also some cases more strict regulation as well. So
yeah, I mean, obviously, have you been married to a Nordic lady for the last 4 decades or so? Been over to Sweden, and I mean, even from the 80s, that was really, it's so embedded in the culture. I think we were generally a bit late to the party in some respects in terms of how integrated it was into our waste management system. I mean, I guess we're probably coming up to a similar sort of level now, but I think you just get that sense that there is a culture of recycling which is very strong in those Nordic countries, and it's difficult to kind of replicate that, I think. Yeah. Okay.
Mike.
Yeah, really, it was just an observation on things because I worked for RAP for 15 years on their organics arm. So we used to subsidise anaerobic digestion plants and various energy from waste plants. And these things were massively expensive to set up. So we used to subsidise them and then monitor their usage. That was part of my job for 5 years after they were built. And the problem was the collection regimes kept changing. And these things to run efficiently need consistently feedstock to produce the energy. So, I mean, it came to an end where you're almost buying in waste just to keep your machine going. So, I mean, it's vitally important that we do get a regime that's simple and is consistent because although it's not directly the responsibility of the districts, the processing of the waste can be a real nightmare because you've got no consistency of flow coming into the site. I mean, particularly AD plants. It can be seasonal as well. So they are a nightmare to run efficiently and competitively, really. So it's just an observation that I think Folkestone and Hythe do pretty well. Speaking for myself in a rural area, the bin men even come up when I'm on holiday. They'll even come up the drive and wheel the bin out and put it back for me, even though I don't ask them to do it. So, speaking personally, it's been very good service.
Thank you. I think that's a very good point, and one of the reasons, as I said, about simple recycling is to help with the investment into facilities and the plant and the processing capacity of the country. So there has that consistency, but the ETS scheme, the emissions trading scheme, will put an impact on the waste to energy side as well. And that potentially could bring a lot of costs to waste disposal authorities in the future. So it's quite a mixed picture on that going forward.
Anybody else? No hands appearing. In which case, we'll say thank you very much, Andrew.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Andrew.
We'll see how it goes.
We'll see it. It's always the best we can do.
Okay, thank you very much. That gentleman, lady, yes, we have got one lady, haven't we? Councillors, thank you for your attendance. And if I could have a word with Alex, please, before he disappears.
No problem.
Can I just ask, please, Frank, we are going to get copies of the presentations.
Yes, I'll circulate those.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We usually do, don't we? So.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Frank.
Thanks,
Thank you for the speakers. Thank you, Andrew.